Hey everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Podcast with Ollie and Aiza. I'm Aiza and I'm here with my co-host Ollie, and we are so excited to have you join us today. How's it going, Ollie?
I'm doing fantastic, Aiza. You know what? I just got back from this little coffee shop down the street, and I have to say, it got me thinking about something really interesting. We always talk about learning English through textbooks and grammar exercises, but honestly, some of the best English lessons happen in the most ordinary places. Like, literally ordering a cup of coffee can teach you so much about real, natural English conversation. So today, we thought, why not dive into that? We're going to explore some super practical English phrases and expressions that you'll hear all the time in cafes, restaurants, and everyday situations. Plus, we'll help you sound more polite, more confident, and just more natural when you're speaking English.
Absolutely. And here's the thing that I love about today's topic. It's not just about memorizing phrases. We're going to show you how real conversations actually flow. You know, when I first started learning English, I used to get so nervous ordering food or drinks because I was worried I'd mess up or sound weird. But then I realized that most conversations, especially in places like coffee shops, follow certain patterns. Once you understand these patterns and pick up a few key expressions, everything becomes so much easier. So whether you're planning to travel to an English-speaking country, you're working in a customer service job, or you just want to feel more comfortable in everyday situations, this episode is definitely for you. We're going to break down a really common scenario: what happens when there's a small mix-up with your order at a cafe. And trust me, this happens all the time, even to native speakers.
Oh, totally. Mix-ups happen everywhere. And actually, that's what makes this such a perfect learning opportunity. Because when something goes wrong, even something small, that's when you really need to know how to communicate clearly and politely. You need to know how to explain the problem without sounding rude, and if you're the person fixing the mistake, you need to know how to apologize sincerely and make things right. These are incredibly valuable skills in English, and they go way beyond just ordering coffee. These same principles apply to so many different situations in life. But before we jump into our main conversation, let me just say, we want this to be interactive. Throughout this episode, we're going to pause at certain points and give you a chance to practice. We'll say a phrase, and we want you to repeat it out loud. Don't be shy. Even if you're listening on the bus or walking down the street, just whisper it to yourself. The physical act of speaking really helps your brain remember these expressions. Sound good?
Perfect. Alright, so let's set the scene. Imagine you're at a cozy little cafe. Maybe it's evening time, you've had a long day, and you just want to relax with a nice hot cup of tea. You order your tea, you sit down, you're looking forward to that first sip. But when the server brings your drink, you realize, oh no, they brought you coffee instead. Now what do? How do you handle this situation in English? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today. We'll walk through the entire conversation step by step, and along the way, we'll highlight some really useful phrases and explain exactly when and how to use them. So Ollie, why don't you start us off? What's the first thing someone should say when they realize there's been a mistake with their order?
Great question. So, the first thing you want to do is get the server's attention politely. You might say something like, "Excuse me," or "Sorry to bother you." These are what we call attention-getting phrases, and they're really important because they show that you're being respectful of the other person's time. You're not demanding their attention, you're politely requesting it. Now, once you have their attention, you want to explain the situation. And here's where it's important to keep your tone friendly and not accusatory. You're not blaming anyone, you're just letting them know about a problem. So you might say something like, "I think there might be a small mix-up with my order." Notice how I said, "I think," and "might be." These words soften your message. You're not saying, "You messed up my order," which would sound aggressive. Instead, you're gently bringing attention to the issue. This is a really important aspect of polite English. We often use these softening words and phrases to make our messages sound less direct and more friendly.
That's such a good point, Ollie. English speakers, especially in customer service situations, tend to be very indirect. We soften things, we use a lot of maybe and I think and it seems like because we want to avoid sounding confrontational. And this is actually something that can be really confusing for English learners because in some cultures, being direct is seen as being honest and clear. But in English-speaking cultures, especially in the US, Canada, UK, Australia, being too direct can sometimes come across as rude, even if that's not your intention at all. So learning these softening techniques is really valuable. Now let's continue with our cafe scenario. After you've gotten the server's attention and mentioned that there's a mix-up, you want to explain specifically what the problem is. You might say, I ordered a tea, but I received a coffee instead. See how clear and specific that is? You're giving them the exact information they need to fix the problem. You're not being vague and saying this isn't right. You're clearly stating what you ordered and what you got. This makes it so much easier for the person helping you to understand and resolve the issue quickly.
Exactly. Clarity is key. And here's something else that's really nice to do in this situation. Even though there's been a mistake, you can still find something positive to say. This is what we call being gracious. So, going back to our coffee-tea mix-up, you might add something like, and honestly, the coffee actually smells really nice. But the thing is, I can't have coffee in the evening because it keeps me up at night. Now, let me break down what's happening here. First, you're complimenting the coffee. It smells really nice. This shows that you're not upset, you're not angry, you're just explaining the situation. Then, you give a reason why you can't have the coffee. You don't have to give a reason, but it helps the other person understand that this isn't just you being picky, there's an actual reason you need the tea instead. And notice the phrase, it keeps me up at night. This is a really common expression in English. When we say something keeps us up, we mean it prevents us from sleeping. You might hear people say, that movie was so scary, it kept me up all night, or, I was worried about the exam, so it kept me up.
Oh, that's a great phrase to learn. Keeps me up, or keeps me awake. These are the same idea. And you know what? This brings me to an interesting expression that you'll hear a lot in casual English conversation. Sometimes people will start a sentence with, for what it's worth. Now this is a really useful phrase, but it can be a bit confusing at first because it's idiomatic, meaning you can't really understand it just from the individual words. When you say for what it's worth, you're basically saying, I'm going to share this information or opinion with you, and maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but I just wanted to mention it anyway. It's a way of being humble about what you're saying. So in our cafe example, you might say, for what it's worth, the coffee smells amazing, but I really need the tea instead. You're complimenting the coffee in a casual, humble way. Other examples might be, for what it's worth, I think that blue shirt looks better on you than the red one. Or, for what it's worth, the restaurant on Main Street has better reviews than the one downtown. It's like you're offering your 2 cents without being pushy about it.
I love that expression. And you're right, it's one of those phrases that native speakers use all the time, but it's not something you'd typically find in a beginner's textbook. That's why we love focusing on real, natural conversations, because that's where you learn the English that people actually speak every day. Now, let's flip the script for a moment. Let's talk about the other side of this conversation. What if you're the server and you realize you've made a mistake? How do you handle that in English? Well, first and foremost, you apologize sincerely. You might say, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me check your order right away. The key here is to sound genuinely sorry, not defensive. You're not making excuses, you're acknowledging the mistake and immediately offering to fix it. Then, once you've checked and confirmed that yes, there was indeed a mix-up, you want to validate the customer's concern. You might say, you're absolutely right. This was our mistake, and I apologize. Using the word our is important here because it shows you're taking collective responsibility, not blaming anyone specifically.
That's really professional. And then, of course, you want to offer a solution immediately. Don't make the customer ask what you're going to do about it, be proactive. You might say, I'll prepare your tea right now. It'll just take a minute. And here's where really excellent customer service goes one step further. Sometimes, to show that you really value the customer and you're sorry about the inconvenience, you might offer something extra. In our scenario, the server might say, and to apologize for the mix-up, your tea is on the house today. Now, on the house is another one of those idiomatic expressions. It means it's free, the establishment is paying for it, not the customer. You'll hear this phrase in restaurants, bars, cafes, anywhere that serves food or drinks. A bartender might say, this round is on the house. Or a restaurant manager might say, your dessert is on the house. It's a really generous gesture. And it's a great way to turn a negative situation into a positive experience for the customer.
Absolutely. And you know what I appreciate about this whole scenario we've been discussing? It shows the importance of tone and attitude in communication. Because honestly, the words you use are only part of the equation. How you say those words, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your body language, that makes a huge difference too. When you're explaining a problem, if you sound friendly and understanding, people will respond much better than if you sound angry or annoyed. And when you're apologizing for a mistake, if you sound sincere and genuinely sorry, the other person is much more likely to be understanding and forgiving. This is true in any language, but it's especially important when you're speaking a language that isn't your native tongue because sometimes we can accidentally sound more aggressive or more emotional than we intend to just because we're not quite comfortable with the language yet.
That is so true. I remember when I was first learning English, sometimes I would say something that I thought was perfectly polite, but people would react like I was being rude or short with them. And I'd be so confused. But then I realized that I wasn't using enough of those softening words we talked about earlier, and maybe my tone was a bit too direct. So I started paying more attention to how native speakers phrase things, and I noticed they used a lot of could you, would you mind? I was wondering if these kinds of polite indirect constructions, once I started incorporating those into my own speech, people responded to me so much better. It made a world of difference. So my advice to anyone listening is, don't just focus on vocabulary and grammar. Pay attention to the rhythm and flow of English, the politeness strategies, the little phrases that make you sound more natural and fluent.
100%. And speaking of phrases that make you sound more natural, let's talk about expressions of certainty and agreement. In our cafe conversation, the customer might end up saying something like, "Thank you so much for fixing this. You've been very kind, and now I'm definitely going to enjoy my evening." That word, definitely, is key. In casual English, we use words like definitely, absolutely, for sure, certainly, all the time to show that we're confident about something or we agree strongly with something. If someone asks you, "Are you coming to the party?" you might say, "Oh, for sure. I wouldn't miss it." Or if someone says, "That movie was incredible, wasn't it?" you might respond, "Absolutely. One of the best I've seen this year." These little words add emphasis and enthusiasm to your speech. They make you sound more engaged and more natural. Without them, your English can sound a bit flat or uncertain, even if you don't mean it that way.
Great point. Let me give you another example. Let's say your friend asks you, "Do you think it's going to rain today?" You could just say yes. But that sounds very short and maybe even a bit uncertain. But if you say, "Oh, definitely. Did you see those dark clouds?" Now you sound much more confident and conversational. Or imagine someone asks you, "Was the restaurant good?" You could say, "Yes, it was good." But compare that to, "Oh, for sure. The food was amazing, and the service was excellent too." See the difference? The second version sounds so much more enthusiastic and natural. So my challenge for all of you listening, start incorporating these confidence markers into your everyday English. Words like definitely, absolutely, for sure, certainly, without a doubt. They'll make you sound much more like a fluent speaker.
Love it. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit of ground already. We've talked about how to politely point out a problem, how to apologize and fix mistakes, how to use softening language, expressions like "for what it's worth" and "on the house," and confidence markers like "definitely" and "for sure." But now, I want to do something a little different. I want to put all of these pieces together and show you how a complete, natural conversation would actually flow from start to finish. And while I'm doing this, I want you listeners to really pay attention to the rhythm and the flow. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Just focus on how the conversation moves, how one person responds to another, how problems are solved. Ready, Aiza?
Ready. Let's do this. So I'll be the customer and you be the server. Let's start from the moment I realize there's been a mix-up. Okay, here we go. Excuse me? Sorry to interrupt, but I think there might be a small issue with my order.
Hi there, no problem at all. What seems to be the matter? How can I help you?
Well, I'm pretty sure I ordered a chamomile tea, but this looks and smells like coffee. Don't get me wrong, it actually smells wonderful and I'm sure it's delicious. But the thing is, I can't have caffeine this late in the day. It totally messes with my sleep, and I have an early morning tomorrow. So I really do need the tea instead if that's possible.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry about that. That's completely my fault. Let me just double-check your order slip here. Yes, you're absolutely right. You did order the chamomile tea, and somehow I brought you a latte instead. I really apologize for the confusion. Give me just a couple of minutes, and I'll get that tea prepared for you right away. And you know what? Please don't worry about paying for the tea. It's on us today. It's the least we can do for the mix-up.
Oh wow, that's really generous of you, but honestly you don't have to do that. These things happen. I know it's busy in here tonight.
I appreciate you being so understanding, but I insist. We pride ourselves on getting orders right, and when we make a mistake, we want to make it right. So please, let me get you that tea, and it won't cost you a thing. I'll be back in just a moment.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And again, sorry for the mix-up. I'll be right back with your chamomile tea.
Okay, great. So did you all hear how that flowed? That was a natural, realistic conversation between a customer and a server when there's been a small mistake. Let's break down some of the key elements. First, notice how as the customer I was polite but clear. I said, "Excuse me." I acknowledged that the coffee smelled good before explaining the problem, and I gave a specific reason why I needed the caffeine issue. This made my request reasonable and understandable. I wasn't just being difficult, I had a legitimate reason. Second, notice how Ali as the server responded. He apologized immediately and sincerely. He took responsibility without making excuses. He offered a solution right away. And then he went above and beyond by offering the tea for free. That's excellent customer service. And those are the kinds of interactions that make customers feel valued and respected.
And here's something else I want to point out. Did you notice all the little phrases we used that made the conversation feel more natural and less robotic? Things like, "Don't get me wrong, the thing is, you know what, these things happen, I appreciate you being so understanding." These are what we call conversational fillers or discourse markers, and they're incredibly important for making your English sound fluent and natural. They give you a second to think, they help transition between ideas, and they make the conversation feel more human and less like you're reading from a script. Native speakers use these all the time, often without even realizing it. So if you want to sound more natural when you speak English, start paying attention to these little phrases and incorporating them into your own speech.
That's excellent advice. And you know, one phrase I want to highlight specifically is, "These things happen." This is such a useful expression for showing understanding and acceptance when something goes wrong. If your colleague makes a mistake at work, you might say, "Hey, don't worry about it. These things happen." If a friend accidentally spills something at your house, you could say, "Oh, it's fine. These things happen. Don't stress about it." It's a way of being gracious and showing that you're not upset, that you understand mistakes are a normal part of life. It makes people feel less embarrassed and more comfortable. Similarly, another phrase we used was, "Don't get me wrong." This is perfect for when you want to say something that might sound critical, but you want to make sure the other person knows you're not being mean or ungrateful. Like, "Don't get me wrong, I love your cooking, but maybe next time we could use a little less salt." Or, "Don't get me wrong, I had fun at the party, but I was pretty tired by the end." It softens your message and prevents misunderstandings.
Perfect examples. Now, let's talk about another important aspect of this whole cafe conversation, the concept of being awake versus being asleep. We mentioned that caffeine keeps people awake, and this is actually a really good opportunity to clarify some vocabulary that can sometimes confuse English learners. When we say someone is awake, we mean their eyes are open, they're conscious, they're not sleeping. It's the opposite of asleep. You might say, "I was awake until midnight studying," or "The baby is finally awake after her nap." Now, when we say something keeps us awake, or wakes us up, we're talking about things that prevent us from sleeping or cause us to stop sleeping. Caffeine keeps us awake. A loud noise might wake us up. A scary movie might keep us awake at night. On the flip side, when we say something helps us fall asleep, or puts us to sleep, we mean it makes us sleepy or helps us sleep. Reading a boring book might put you to sleep. Warm milk might help you fall asleep. See the difference?
That's really helpful clarification. And while we're on the topic of sleep-related vocabulary, let me mention a few more expressions that are super common in English. When someone says, I pulled an all-nighter, it means they stayed awake all night, usually studying or working. I couldn't sleep a wink means you didn't sleep at all, not even a tiny bit. I slept like a log means you slept very deeply and peacefully. And I'm a light sleeper means you wake up easily from small noises or movements. While I'm a heavy sleeper means you sleep very deeply and it's hard to wake you up. These are all really natural everyday expressions that you'll hear native speakers use all the time. So if someone asks you, how did you sleep? You could say, oh, I slept like a log. Or honestly, I couldn't sleep a wink. I was too excited about the trip today.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered a lot of really practical vocabulary and expressions today. But before we wrap up, I want us to do a quick interactive practice section. This is where you, our wonderful listeners, get to participate actively. We're going to say some phrases and we want you to repeat them out loud. Remember, speaking is a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger you get. Don't be embarrassed, don't be shy. Even if you're on a crowded train, you can whisper these to yourself. Ready? Let's start with some polite, attention-getting phrases. Repeat after me, excuse me. Sorry to bother you. I think there might be a small problem. Great. Now let's practice explaining an order mix-up. I ordered a tea, but I received a coffee instead. For what it's worth, the coffee smells really good. Excellent. Now let's practice apologizing and taking responsibility. I'm so sorry about that. That was my mistake. Let me fix that for you right away. Perfect. Now some expressions of certainty and gratitude. For sure. Absolutely. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate it. Fantastic work, everyone. How did that feel? I hope you all participated. Remember, the physical act of speaking these phrases out loud helps your brain remember them so much better than just reading them silently.
Absolutely. And here's a pro tip for you. After you finish listening to this episode, try creating your own cafe conversation. Imagine you're ordering something at a coffee shop. What would you say? How would you greet the server? How would you place your order? What if they asked you a question you weren't expecting? Walk yourself through the whole scenario in English. You can even do this out loud while you're in the shower or driving your car. Anywhere you have some privacy. This kind of mental rehearsal is incredibly valuable because when you eventually find yourself in a real cafe in an English-speaking country, or talking to an English-speaking colleague at work, your brain will already have practiced these patterns. The words will come more naturally and easily. You'll feel more confident and less nervous.
That's such great advice, Aiza. And you know what? This same principle applies to so many different situations, not just cafe conversations. Whether you're at a hotel checking in, at a store returning an item, at a doctor's office describing symptoms, or at work discussing a project, all of these situations have their own common phrases and patterns. Once you learn these patterns and practice them, English becomes so much less intimidating. You realize that most conversations actually follow pretty predictable structures, and once you know those structures, you can navigate them with confidence. So I really encourage all of you listening, don't just passively consume English content. Actively practice. Role-play conversations. Talk to yourself in English. Find a language partner and practice together. The more you use the language, the more comfortable you'll become.
100%. And before we close out today's episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. Learning a language is a journey, not a race. It's okay if you don't remember every single phrase we talked about today. It's okay if you make mistakes when you're speaking. Mistakes are actually how we learn. Every native English speaker makes mistakes too. We forget words, we stumble over sentences, we say things that come out wrong. That's just part of being human and communicating. So please be patient with yourself. Celebrate the progress you're making, no matter how small it might seem. Maybe today you learned one new expression like for what it's worth, or on the house. That's amazing. That's one more phrase you didn't know yesterday. Keep building, keep practicing, keep putting yourself out there, and I promise you your English will improve.
Beautifully said, Aiza. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We genuinely hope this episode has been helpful, that you've picked up some useful phrases, and most importantly, that you feel a little more confident about having conversations in English. Remember, every conversation is an opportunity to practice and improve. So next time you're at a coffee shop, whether in your home country or abroad, use it as a chance to practice your English. Order in English, make small talk with the barista in English, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Most people will appreciate that you're trying, and you'll be amazed at how quickly your skills develop when you put them to use in real-life situations. We'll be back soon with another episode full of practical English lessons and fun conversations. Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep speaking English.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends who are also learning English. The more we can help people gain confidence in their English skills, the better. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you very soon. This has been Podcasts with Ollie and Aiza. Happy learning.